love to introduce myself. Thank you for inviting me this morning. My name's Tessa Munt, and I suppose if I contextualise myself, for most people, I'm the Lib Dem parliamentary candidate for the new Wells and Mendip Hills constituency. It used to be called Wells, now called Wells and Mendip Hills.
Amazing. And how's it changed in place-wise?
Oh, quite a lot. So unfortunately, I've lost Glastonbury and Street.
Right.
And I've lost Highbridge and Burnham and Bryn and Barrow.
Oh, really?
Yep. And then I've lost up in the top corner on the right-hand side of the map, if you like. I've lost Chilcompton and Stratton on the Foss. And
that kind of...
yes, that's a smaller quantity, but actually those people are brilliant. That's the old Mendip coalfields.
Yeah, yeah. So what's happened to... So have you gained anywhere?
Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have.
So what's the gain?
The bit that the gains are Bamwell and Winscombe and Churchill and Blagdon, and then Congsbury and Hewish.
Oh,
right. And then Yatton. But
That's
if you
weird, isn't it?
No, it's weird until you think in a parliamentary boundary changes sort of way. What they've done, I think, is probably started at Cornwall, worked their way up the country, tried to make every seat either side of 71,000 people.
Yeah.
And then what they've done is they've so let's take the seat of Weston-super-Mare. That, because there's been quite a lot of building there, they've kind of squashed that seat in. It can't go any further than the coast, so they've started at the coast and brought it out to 71,000. So all of the rural hinterland around Weston and Wirral has come into Wells and Mendip Hills, which is lovely. That's brilliant, because all rural, it's market towns and villages and hamlets. So and it fits.
So it kind of, there's a topic there.
Oh, there is. There's a theme. Yes, that's right. And it's brilliant because, I do rural.
Yeah.
I like rural.
Were you a rural person?
I'm a rural person.
Were you brought up in
rural? Yes.
Yeah. So were you born local?
No, I wasn't. I was born in Surrey.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh,
I mean, you and I know each other.
A long time.
People know for
Yeah. So I was born in Surrey, and I'm the oldest of 4 and then eventually 7 children. So a lovely, what do we call them? Blended family.
Yeah.
And that's lovely. That's brilliant. I'm the oldest of 7. I guess I'm meant to be the boss.
So how did you end up in Somerset?
Oh, well, my dad came to Somerset when I was 11.
Right, okay.
So I was up and down a bit. And then my father had, unfortunately, when I was he probably came here when I was 10 or 9 or something. But he had a very, very bad car accident, when I was about 11. And so I sort of lost contact with him because my amazing, wonderful, incredible stepmother, Eileen, who lives in Wells still, she had been a nurse. She looked after him and brought him out of Frenchay and said, no, I'm taking him home. I'm not leaving him here. Yeah. Because they sort of suggested that he ought to stay there, I think, and
pass away.
Yes, and she wasn't having any of that. Yeah. So my younger brother Peter was effectively brought up with my father, who had to learn everything from scratch.
Bless him.
Yeah, everything. So, and he was top bloke, my dad.
So how long ago did he pass away?
2005.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So he did all right in the end.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, yes. I mean, no, he was amazing. So he actually worked, I mean, the lovely Clark family gave him a job. I think it was doing something relatively very junior. Yeah. But he had a job to go to, which was fantastic. I can remember as a child going to see Titania's Palace at Wookey Hole. I suppose if I did a bit of research, I could work out when that was. I don't really know, but I can remember going, and he was the sort of like the caretaker there. Yeah. But he was unrelentingly cheerful in spite of everything. He must have been in quite a lot of pain, and and people like the Lions Club in Wells were fantastic. They provided him with a hoist and with a whizzy bed that went up and down and back and forth and all the rest of it, which helped my Eileen, my stepmother, look after him at home. And yes, I mean, he lived for years.
Wow.
After.
Amazing,
Years.
Because you've got, am I allowed to say this about your experience as well with your mum? Because your mum's had a terrific, horrendous terrifically horrendous. I think that would be the
Yeah.
It's a good term to use.
Yeah. Well, not with a car accident, but like
no, mum had a stroke,
Yes.
quite a severe stroke,
Yes.
and has been struggling with recovery for the last 4 and a bit years now. And yeah, these things take a long time,
but it's so quick. The quicker somebody gets help, the better.
Exactly, that's it. That's exactly it.
And how is your mum now?
She's doing okay. So, she is, she still struggles. She's still having physio a couple of times a week. She's still using a walker.
Yes.
But, the week that she had the stroke, I remember going into hospital, seeing her being, hoisted around one of these hoists from the ceiling,
Yes.
thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And she's made a tremendous recovery. She doesn't think she has. She quite often has very negative moments where she says negative things.
Well, she'll think about all the things she can't do, whereas actually we need to look at people in terms of the things they can do. Everybody, we should judge them what they can do.
That's it.
But you judge yourself.
Yeah, you do.
It's not just. It isn't just that. And I think that I mean I know from my own experience, not being able to do half the things that I used to do before. It's like I give myself a hard time more than I give.
Oh yeah.
The outside world does. The outside world go, oh, don't worry about it. You'll do it when you do it, and if you can't do it, it's fine. Whereas the internal conversation is very different sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
So you're obviously that was your relationship with Somerset.
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to bring my children up here.
Right. Okay.
So what had happened was I'd left school at 18. University was never a thing for me.
So
actually, it wasn't a thing for any of us children. That's correct. So the younger ones cut their own swathe. They did their own thing. But certainly for the first 4 of us, university wasn't even discussed, at all. Very extraordinary. I mean, my kids have been to university. My partner's children, one of them has been to university. So we have a blended family. And we've got a more complex blended family as well, because I gathered up a stepdaughter, he gathered up a stepson. So there's 6 children that we have between us. And we love them dearly, and they've all done all sorts of different things. Yes, I mean, so university was not a thing for me, but so I went to work, which is fine. I mean, you don't miss what you don't know, although I do think when I'm about 80 and I've finished doing what I'm doing at the moment, I might go to university. I haven't worked out quite what I study yet, because there's I'm quite interested in prisons and prison reform.
Oh dear.
Oh dear is about right, I know.
Well, I went back and absolutely hated because I missed all of my education from the age of about 13.
Yeah.
I had no education at all.
Right.
Popped in and out.
Yeah.
Say
hello.
Yes. Say hello.
Get yourself on the register a bit.
Yeah, exactly. But I very much, so going back to education as an adult, and I had my supervisor, I was working in the mental health services, and she said, you need to go to college, and college was linked to university. And so the course that I did was a university-based course. I hated every single moment of it.
Did you complete it?
Yeah, I had to.
There you are.
I got my qualifications, but that's about it. And it's like...
It's funny, isn't it? I met somebody just this week who's highly successful, and I've known him for years. And it was only this week that he said to me, well, I had 1 CSE. And I said, oh, what was it in? And he said, probably art. So it was that important that he couldn't even remember what it was he'd got. Fantastically successful, just drive and enthusiasm and personality. And that's what you really need.
That's the thing, isn't it? People don't have to go. You didn't go to university.
No, I didn't go to university either.
No. My youngest 2 didn't go to university at all. James,
we've got some who haven't.
Yeah, James did, dropped out, and then went back when he was...
I've got one of those as well. In fact, she had 3 goes. So got there.
Yeah, But I think there's the pressure to go to university that should not be there.
No. I mean, so my amazing partner, David, always says, find something enjoy doing and try and make money at it.
Yeah.
And all you need, the only money you need is enough to survive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I'm doing that. So,
hallelujah.
Well, it's brilliant. But
so you came here. So what did you do?
What did I do? Well, the reason I came here was because of a wonderful man in Glastonbury called Alan Gloak. Alan Gloak was a councillor. He was a county councillor, probably a district councillor at the time, and certainly a town councillor. And if he wasn't then, he was shortly afterwards, And he had caught up with me somehow at a parliamentary by-election which had taken place in Ipswich. So I worked for 15 years in East Anglia. And what happened was he called me the day after a parliamentary by-election in Ipswich. So he called me on the 23rd of November 2001 and said, darling, I think you could probably win if you stood in Wells. So I said, right, okay, right. Funnily enough, my dad lives in Wells. And he said, right, come. And so I came, and it was the opportunity, it was the nudge I needed to actually return to Somerset, bring the children up here and everything. And at that point, my marriage was a little bit dodgily. So, but we all came down to Somerset, and Martin, my now ex-husband, moved to Compton Bishop, and I moved to Mark. And so we shuttled the children for years. And that was great, absolutely great. So I came down here. No, so I came down in 2001. I stood in 2005. The firm for whom I worked, who were firm solicitors. I'm not a solicitor. I'm going to say that now. I was just a fee earner, so I was able to do certain types of work that brought fees in for the firm. The firm I worked for were absolutely brilliant and allowed me to have vast tracts of time off unpaid, which fitted around the 2001 and 2005 elections. And then at the end of 2006, I stopped working for them, and we sold our house, and I took my half of the house and put it in the bank, divvied up, made a mental note, right, okay, 4 years until 2010.
Yeah.
The election had to take place by June 2010 or May 2010. I divvied it up into 4 piles, effectively 4 little pots, and said, right, I'm going to have to live on that.
Wow, that's a tremendous sacrifice to make for.
Yeah, but I was quite determined to have a really good go at it.
Okay.
And the children, I just said to them, okay, fine, there's enough money for us to have a holiday a year, possibly 2, but we have to live very frugally. And we did. We lived very frugally. And that's carried on, really. I had a good bit in 2010, didn't I, when I won? And I did win, and I was very lucky because I had 1 month's money left after the election.
No, you won by a landslide, didn't you? You did really well.
Well, no. It was not a landslide. It was a little molehill.
Was it?
It was. I won by, when they counted the votes the first time, at about 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd won by 400 votes. My opponent's family asked for a recount, and then I won by 800 votes. God, do it again, because I might win by 1,200 next time. So I won by 800 votes, which is actually a very slim margin. Over 82,000 people could have potentially voted. And so I always knew it was a close one, and I'd been jolly lucky to win it in 2015 because the full might of my opponent's party would have.
I was going to say, yeah.
And they did.
The political landslide in 2015 was very different.
Absolutely.
So as a councillor or as a...
So I was an MP between 2010. I've done everything in reverse. So most people become a councillor and then decide they want to go on.
And then you went, but you didn't.
I did completely reverse. So I did 2010 to 2015 as the MP.
You didn't need while you were a candidate.
No. God, no. Well, you might do in some other parties, but not mine. I think if you're a Labour Party person, you get sponsorship sometimes from the unions or from the cooperative something. I have no doubt somebody will write to you saying she's talking utter rubbish if I am. And there are certainly some Conservative candidates who might have been sponsored in some way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
We don't.
Okay, let me get my head around this, because so what you're saying is you give up all of your money to become an MP, which you were very successful at, and you did a really good job. Everybody's really happy with your work. But obviously, like Mike said, the political kind of scene changed quite radically after that. But locally, most people would say, if you had to compare locally, you probably did more than most.
I hope so.
Yeah, no, you did.
And I'm standing again. Next time I'll do it with knobs.
But I live in the area, so I know. So I'm very aware of that. But also, I suppose, so you do all of that. You have to wait till everybody puts their little tick in the box, and then you might get paid if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, it's the longest job interview ever. Effectively, I had 8 years of job interview.
So what are you doing now? Because you are standing again. Have you had to divvy money up again? Or
No. I am incredibly lucky because in 2008 I met David, David farms locally, and he'll carry on farming until he literally can't. And I don't know what would stop him.
Like most farmers.
That's right. But he's so I have the safety of a home. You know, we're tenants in our home, but we're safe and secure. And so I have the benefit of living with a man who's provided me with a home. And then actually the things I need to live are minimal. I eat 2 bananas in the morning. I live on hot water.
So you're cheap.
I'm very cheap. I know, yes, that's probably what was so appealing in 2008. But no, so I have the comfort of a home. And then I am paid a basic allowance as a backbench councillor at Somerset Council. So I have so
you've got some employment
money, yes, which is meant to compensate those people who are employed for the time that they might have to take off in order to fulfil their council duties. It just happens that I do it on a slightly more expensive scale. That's all. So I do. Because I'm not, frankly, Angie, I'm probably not employable because everybody knows that I want to be an MP. And so the moment that there's the sniff of an election in the air, I'm off. Yes. Yes. So, and I think I've probably been pretty unemployable since I stood in 2005 and said, I'll be back. When I didn't win, I said, I'll be back.
So how do you feel about this
coming election?
This coming election,
wow, what an interesting background there is. And I would be absolutely honest and say that in 2010 I won. Possibly part of the reason I won was people kind of went, ooh, better the devil you know than the devil you don't, in the context of the MP's expenses scandal.
Yes,
and the MP who was here got caught up in that in a dreadful way. And of course it was very funny because he'd been buying horse shit.
Yeah.
And that is,
I do remember the news
unforgettable. It's unforgettable and faintly amusing. Yeah. So I probably benefited from that, in that people kind of went, well, at least I've met her. And
I think I
can't vote for this person. I'll give her a go.
Principles.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I think you did exceptionally well in the sense of you were seen within the area so much.
Well, I spent 8 years. I still am. I am now. No, but I spent 8 years talking to people, and it took me 8 years to meet on the doorstep and have conversations with 49,000 people.
Yeah,
a clicker in my pocket.
Oh, did you?
And every time I met a new person and spoke to them.
Wow.
So, and I had countless people saying, he's a very good constituency MP. And you listen, and the processing I was doing was going, actually, he's not here. Don't say that. Can't say that. I just listened.
Yeah.
But I just thought, over the years, well, I am going to do this job. If I get this job, after this very long interview, if I get this job, I'm going to do it the way I think it should be done.
Yeah.
And I did it the way I thought it should be done. And there are some tweaks that I would do to it if I had the chance to do it again.
Okay.
because there are things I could do better.
Yeah.
But isn't that the way forward with any job? I mean, if you're going to do a job, obviously there's parameters in every job, but it's about putting your best into it, and you have to mold it to you and your personality, otherwise they don't work.
No, that's right. And I love people. People go, you must be mad to be standing. I'm not mad. I love people, and I have a very clear view about what you do when people come to you with a problem. You don't go, oh, sorry, that's actually the county council, or that's actually the highways department. You go, right, bring it on. If somebody's taken the trouble to come to me, I bloody well deal with it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Don't faff about.
And you do, because I've experienced that myself. Hedgegate comes to mind. I could think of a couple of other things, and it does make such a difference having somebody that will be accountable rather than, even if they say, I'm really, really sorry, I've tried my absolute best, but I can't do anything about it. You'd rather have that than somebody that just pushes you from pillar to post and ignores you.
People, I don't believe that the general public has much of a view about what it is that their MP does, what their local Somerset councillor does, what their parish councillor does. They don't give a flying doodah.
No.
What they want is someone to sort out the problem they have.
Yeah.
And so therefore you just say yes. And you say, yes, I'll try.
Yeah.
And that's the clue for me, is you say yes, you try, and then you bloody well try. And you're right, Angie, if I can't do something, then I will go back, but I will try and try and try and try. Yeah. And I did work in Parliament. I realised that there's something about being persistent. And I'm absolutely certain that some of the wins I got for this part of Somerset in the period from 2010 to 2015 were entirely based on the fact where people go, oh, there's that bloody woman again.
Yeah.
Give her what she wants and she'll go away. And
yeah.
you just think, I'll have what you want. Thank you very much indeed. Now, while we're here, there's this and this and this and this, and I'll be back. And I do think persistence pays off. It's all, you can always say to somebody, oh, can I have this? Or can you do this for somebody? And they go, no, I don't think I can really do that.
But at least
you walk away.
Yeah, but at least you've tried.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, my dad's a big fan of yours. I think that's fair to say.
Your dad. Do I know your dad? Have I met him?
You've probably met him. I'm not sure.
We better hook them up.
Yeah, that's it.
They're Lib.
Oh yeah, they are. They are.
Oh, I love Limbisham. They've got the best little sports club, and oh my goodness, they're brilliant.
They have. But my dad's a big fan of yours in the sense of that he felt that you did the most for the local area in your time in office compared with any other MP. And I think there's a stark difference between different MPs. I live in Weston, sadly, so I'm not one of your constituents. But
move.
I'm hoping to move. That's another story. But
Official.
The MP there who I like, I think he's a nice guy, but he's a very different MP. He's an MP who's in London 4 days a week, and is in the area 1 day a week.
But no. There are 7 days in every week. There are 7 days in every week. So what I would do was my time off was on a Sunday morning mostly, unless we had church services to go to, because there's all sorts of frills and spills that go with being an MP where, even now I get masses of invitations to go to this or that or the other, formal stuff and informal stuff. Yeah, it's brilliant. If my diary's empty, we say yes. And then we work out how we're going to do it. But there are 7 days in every week. So my office was here in Wedmore, and at 10:30 in the morning on a Monday, I would leave the office and go up to London. I'd be in the house, therefore, by 1:30, 2 o'clock. Then I'd spend, so that would be Monday evening, Tuesday all day in the evening, Wednesday all day in the evening, Thursday until 5 o'clock when there's a vote. That's the last vote of the week. And I would literally, I probably wouldn't do it now, but back in all those years, I'd bring my car up from the car park. It would be sitting on the courtyard outside Parliament, running. I'd run in and vote, bolt back out, straight down the 303. Or if I had something to do over in Highbridge or Burnham, it'd be down the M4. Woof. And I'd meet David wherever it was. We'd do whatever we had to do on a Thursday evening, usually parish councils or something like that, or, things like Rotary or whatever else. And then Friday and Saturdays, did my surgeries. So I hold the record for the biggest number of surgeries of any MP ever, which was during that 5 years, I did 704.
Wow.
So on a Friday and Saturday, we'd do the regular surgeries. So they were places like Shepton Mallet and Wells and Glastonbury Street, Highbridge, Burnham, Wetmore, Cheddar, Axbridge, Chilcompton. Next time round, those places will change because I'll be in different places, hopefully. But those were on a regular session. So, if it was the third Friday in Axbridge between, 11 o'clock and 1:30, that's where I'd be every single week through those 5 years.
Wow.
And Saturdays, we do the same thing. Sunday morning, I do a little light farming with David. That's our time. And then Sunday afternoon, if people couldn't get to my surgery, then I do home visits, because there are a lot of people who can't reach even their nearest town, or they have mobility difficulties, or they've some trauma that stops them coming to see somebody. I always ran my surgeries in cafes, never in village halls, always in cafes and pubs. And there are some people who can't go to pubs.
Yeah.
So, I'm acutely aware of that. And the reason for that is, if you go into any cafe locally, it's noisy.
Yeah.
And so I can talk to you at this distance. And to be honest, Mike, no one will even know your name.
No.
They won't hear anything we're saying. If somebody gets upset, then I just say, okay, fine, I'll come see you at home tomorrow or Sunday or whatever. And we just have a cup of coffee. But I think it's really important because there's that whole thing of, you go into a village hall, go to Limpsham Village Hall, and everyone goes, oh, look, so-and-so must have a problem. They're going to see their MP.
Yeah.
And it could be anything from a pothole to something terribly personal. So it's about just being around. And, I've scouted the new area, and there are some very good cafes. But I think it's really important that people can get to see you in a very informal setting when nobody has a clue what anyone's talking about. And I've run my surgeries in Wells all the way through from 2003.
Yeah.
Always done it on the first Saturday of the month, and I do it between 8:30 and 10 o'clock. I've done that. So what's that? That's 19 years, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Long time.
Are you still doing it?
Yeah, of course. Because
Amazing.
people need to see somebody who isn't their
How
MP.
would somebody, I know this sounds crazy,
Yeah.
but how would because I didn't know that.
Well,
And I live in,
yeah,
but I suppose I know, because in a sense I could just give you a ring if I wanted
exactly.
to. But how do people find that kind of information out? And I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about everybody out there. How do you get some?
It's down to individuals, how they run their professional lives, if you like. I've had for many years, I've had reaching down to my bag to get, but I have a series of postcards, right? If you haven't got one of these, Angie, it needs to be on your fridge. Right. Okay. So that postcard.
I really want to look at you every single day.
Me too. And on the back of that, you'll see my address. It's my home address.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And you'll see my email address, but more importantly, you'll see my mobile, and it says text is best. And I can tell you, over the years, I will have circulated about 170,000 times that postcard.
Do you give that everywhere. Personally, or do you get those posted through the doors?
Sometimes. So I had an amazing man called Harold who used to help me while I was the MP. He's not so mobile now, so he can't do it, which is a real shame. But tribute to Harold. Absolutely massive fan of Harold. So when I knew, so let's say I was going to do a surgery at Priddy. So Priddy I would go to maybe every 3 or 4 or 5 months, something like that, do all the villages on a rotation.
Yeah.
So what would happen was Harold would take one of my postcards, but we'd have them printed with 3 months worth of dates of the surgeries, say in Priddy, in Cheddar and Wells, so that we just let them know where the surgeries were.
So they had options.
So they knew where I was at what time. And then Harold would go around the week beforehand and the Priddy one would be on the top for the Priddy cards. And he'd put them through every door in Priddy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's absolutely
That's
fantastic.
good.
Yeah, so he worked ahead of me all the time. Running around like
everybody needs a Harold.
Everyone needs a Harold. It does need a Harold. But it just made sure that people knew where, and so if I went to Stratton on the Foss, the only place in Stratton on the Foss was the King's Arms, and they're an amazing pub, and we'd go there in the evenings and people would come along. The best one I ever did, well, depending on how you call best, I sorted out, I was opening the Fate in Wookie at 2:00, and I'd said to them, look, I've absolutely got to run. I'm really sorry I have to leave because at 3:00 I'm running a surgery in Rooksbridge, and it was at the Welly, the Duke of Wellington. It was in the Duke of Wellington pub, and it was at 3:00. And I said, very unlikely to have any people there, but I must be there at 3:00 because I've said I'll be there between 3 and 4:30. So turned up at 3:00, and sure enough, there was somebody there, which was brilliant. And I spoke to this gentleman, and we went through some stuff. And David was sitting further back in the pub because he'd come to the Wookie Fate with me. And he said, Tess, sorry to interrupt. What's going on the other side of the road? And we looked out of the front window of the pub, and there were literally about 20 people queued up on the other side of
to see you.
And I just thought, they can't be coming to see me. This is just
weird.
Yes. Anyway, so sure enough, the landlord came through and said, I think you better go into the next door bar. There's a lot of people who want to see you. And I thought, oh shit, they are coming for me. And they were talking about a wind farm. That there was a proposal to put a wind farm on the top of Brent Knoll. I'm utterly nuts, absolutely marginally bonkers idea. But they'd all come, and they'd brought along Mark Newman, who runs BurnhamOnSea.com, which is a huge website, isn't it? And they've got masses of hits. And so he turned up as well, and had to purloin a stepladder from somewhere because the crowd of people was massive, absolutely massive. It wasn't just those 20, masses more turned up as well. So we had a photograph. Thank God it wasn't raining. We had a photograph. He's standing up a stepladder to be able to get everybody's faces with no wall. Well, I can't remember what it was called. No wind farm in wherever it was. And you just think, gosh, people do listen and do read.
People do listen and they do care. Yeah.
They definitely care. Definitely care. And the things I've had in case, and that's so I've always based all of my staff locally. So the office in Wedmore, somebody from Heath House, somebody from Godney, somebody from Cheddar, someone from Shepton Mallet, someone from Wells. And then various other people who used to come in and do loads, and I mean literally hundreds of young people who did work experience with me. And if they could, and very often their schools were incredibly helpful, they'd let them come up to London with me for the Monday to Thursday bit, and then they'd come down and they kind of go, when do you sleep? Don't worry about sleep.
Sleep's fun. When sleep.
Exactly. Yes. But and I had one member of staff who used to come up to London, and his role was to do the policy side of stuff. So personal stuff was dealt with in the Somerset base, and the London base was for dealing with things that were systemic problems, as opposed to, if you might come to this particular part of the system and it throws you out for some reason, we can deal with that down here because that's just a cock up somewhere. Yes. But if you, Angie, come into the system and both get the same response and it's wrong, or it feels wrong, that's a systemic problem that has to be taken to London, and then you have to talk to the policymakers and the people who actually set the guidelines and go, no, bang, bang, bang on the desk.
That makes sense.
So I had one member of staff up in who did all the policy stuff, and that was exactly the right way. And the things that come into surgeries that come in email, in letter form, on the telephone and everything, it was just a matter of saying, okay, fine, is this a problem that somebody's come across and it's just a bit wonky, or is it a systemic problem? Systemic stuff goes to London. And that was the way we did it, and we did some brilliant stuff.
Isn't there some systemic stuff that happens locally as well, where
sometimes
you tend to find stuff that it's been inherited, people's behaviour's been inherited by like a team or whatever, and then you end up, with people like denying the local constituents what they deserve.
Well, yes, that's right. But the way I always dealt with stuff was that my team and I would always say, this is what Angie's told us. This is what we've been told has happened. Please, could you give me a briefing? And that allows somebody to go, oh, shit, we've really cocked up on that one. Change the process, sort the actions out, get it done, and Angie's problem is solved. Or they can explain to me why they've made those decisions, and I can then explain to you that it's government legislation that prevents them doing the right thing. I'll go back and sort that out through that's the system. That's a systemic problem. I'll take it to London. So that's a problem at the moment. I'll see if I can sort the problem. And I've done that with my famous jam story. I am an expert in jam now, but I'm only an expert in jam due to a lady called Vivian Lloyd, who lives up in Clapton, which is just outside Chilcompton, who was at one time an international jam judge, top lady. She turned up in my surgery in Wells and said, kind of try this, try that, try that, try that. 4 spoons worth of jam. Said, what do you think? I think, oh shit, I'm bound to get this wrong. And go, well, I quite like number 1 and number 4, and I'm not sure about the other 2 in the middle, that kind of thing. She, yes, absolutely, you've got the right answer. I go, how have I got the right answer? I don't know what I've done. Anyway, and we spent probably 3 or 4 months pulling together the information. She told me that Bristol University in 1922 was the organisation that set the standards for jam and said that we have 60% sugar in British jam. Now, did you know that British jam is actually the biggest export to Japan and to Australia?
Did not know that.
No, well, there you are. Every day is a school day. Yes. And Vivian was all over this stuff. And she, at the time, I was working in the business department. I was a parliamentary private secretary, so bag carrier effectively to Vince Cable, who was the Secretary of State. And I spent 3 years doing that job. And interestingly enough, when I spoke to Vince about this, he said, "Ooh, one of my constituents is the person who's asking for sugar to be reduced in jam. It needs to go down to 50%. And this is what Vivian had complained about, was the fact that actually when you use 50% sugar in jam, you get something that's a very different texture, different colour. And I have to say that I got rather over-enthusiastic during the debate about jam, which I managed to call a debate. And this is done on a rota thing. So you put your name in every week and say, I want to talk about jam, I want to talk about jam, I want to talk about jam. Anyway, I've ended up having a debate about jam with the DEFRA minister who was in charge of jam. I'm sure his job was much bigger than but anyway, and arguing the toss that we need to have 60% sugar in jam, and if there's a problem for those who have, for example, diabetes, they just need to have a little less jam on their toast. And maybe let's get this in context and in proportion. But we shouldn't be changing it because Bristol had worked out that this was how to keep the fruit solid in jam. This is how to keep the colour, how you can put it in your larder and keep it for 2 and 3 and 4 years. If you get the sugar, it's right. You just scrape the top off, a little bit of mould on the top after a couple of 3 years. And all of this stuff, I learned so much because Vivian told me. Vivian, you are as good as your brief as an MP. Yeah, and anything that anyone tells you, that's your basis for fact, effectively. Anyway, so did this debate and just challenged all the way through that this was bonkers stuff. And 3 or 4 weeks later, I got a letter saying that DEFRA was dropping their change of
jam.
Yes. In the meantime, I'd managed to offend both the American trade attaché and the French ambassador, because when I got back after the debate, I had at some point said, we do not want to end up with the stuff that is served, for example, in France and in America, which is literally gloopy sludge.
Yeah.
Right. At which point, when I got back to the office, Tom, who worked with me, kind of went, okay, every news media organisation wants to speak to you about jam. Very, very quiet news day. Very quiet. Every news media organisation wants to talk to you. So I'm just putting together a schedule of you just skipping around the studios, and we're going to try and get some of them to come to Parliament to do it because you can't go everywhere. And Radio Somerset, Radio Devon, Radio Derby, stuff like, mad. Anyway, and at some point you're going to have to go and see the American trade attaché and the French ambassador and apologise for calling their jam gloopy sludge, which I did with grace. Sorry, but it is.
That's a really good, it's a really good win for something.
And do you know what? The weirdest thing was the following morning I had an email in from a friend of mine in Australia who said, "Why are you on the front page of the Melbourne Times or the Melbourne News?" He said, "I opened my paper up from when I got it out of the letterbox. I opened my paper and there you are on the front page of some Australian newspaper talking about bloody jam."
That's brilliant.
Yeah. But, there are things that are demonstrated by that. One is there are very quiet news days in the world and they want to talk to every newser. Literally, we did the rounds. I did that week. I then handed them over to Vivian, who was well capable of defending her position about jam. And she did, oh God, I can't remember. There was some of the, things like Loose Women and all sorts of, really interesting, newsy programs that were based much more in daytime TV. But the thing is, as an MP, you are informed about events by your constituents, and they are the people who brief you. And they are right.
Yeah, because they know
their business way more than I ever could.
Yeah, because you're not a specialist in everything, are you?
Certainly not jam.
You've only got
no. See, not no. But they are a specialist in their lives.
Yeah,
everybody is a specialist in their own life, and you can try to understand, and you can try to see a way through, and you can try really, really hard to get things better for people.
I completely agree with that. And I think it also doesn't matter which political party you represent when you're listening to your constituents. So I guess one of my questions is why Lib Dem? Because
my parents were both Conservatives, and I suppose I was a bit rebellious. I did join another party before then. It wasn't the Conservatives. And I didn't have a very pleasant experience in that other party. I was wrong. So I left them. And a load of my friends who had been in that party had joined the Liberal Democrats, and they said, "Look, you really ought to come to this lot. They're much more fun." So I resisted for 2 years. And then I just thought, oh, God, leave me alone. All right, then, okay, I'll join and give it a try, and found my political home. And the thing I like is I don't have to agree with my leader. I don't have to agree with anybody else. I can fight my corner. I have views that are very different from a lot of the stated Lib Dem policy, and I will fight for what I believe. And nobody will send me to Coventry or do anything ridiculous. I can argue with the leader is Ed Davey. If I disagree with him, I will tell him. And I will tell him privately, and I will tell him publicly on the conference stage that I think he's wrong. I've done it with previous leaders as well. I can be me. And I don't get bullied for being me, and I don't get told off for being me. And if I have a policy difference, it's cool. We're a very broad-based group of people. And I think I like that freedom. I like the freedom to be able to express my own views and to be able to say, look, the party believes this, but I believe this. And my job is to debate this through our conference, which makes policy, and fight and fight and fight. And I'll carry on. I've been, as probably the whole flipping world knows, certainly Hinckley knows, I'm opposed to nuclear power. I'm opposed to nuclear weapons. Utterly, fundamentally opposed. I can see that nuclear fusion might be an answer for the future, but we're not there yet. But at the moment, I've held those views about what do you do with the waste? Hurling it on somebody else's garden is not the answer, in my view. So I think that, and I've held those views since I was 16 or so, maybe 17. And I haven't changed that in all those years. And my party thinks that, we should have a few nuclear submarines and we should have a little bit of a nuclear power to fill a gap. I take a different view. And I'm very happy, and I'll stand my ground. And I actually became when I was asked if I'd like to, when Vince Cable asked me if I'd like to be his parliamentary private secretary, I said, yes, absolutely. I'd love to do that. It'd be great. But you will have to agree with the Prime Minister that I'm not going to vote for nuclear power. I'm not going to vote for nuclear weapons, and I don't really do war. And the other thing is I'm fundamentally opposed to fracking. So if you can sort that out, I'd love to be your PPS. And he did, and it took about 4 weeks or something like that, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And in the end, I guess Vince is probably just as persistent and goes, yeah, I want her. And I wanted to do the job, and we got there. And I resigned when we came to the vote about fracking. I resigned on the point of principle. I had to resign because I was technically a member of the government.
Yeah.
And right, okay, I'm off.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And obviously this coming election,
yes,
fingers crossed for you.
Well, thank you very much. Everything's crossed.
Absolutely. Yes. And like I said, I think
it's the election. Sorry,
we don't know. We don't know. Rishi Sunak can just choose the date.
Yeah.
I anticipate it's going to be sometime in the summer or just after, I think. But my other question is any plans or goals for being more front bench this time?
Oh, God, no. I just want to be a good MP here. And I can say that because I know what I need to do. No, I mean, no, I don't think so. I just want to be, I want to give people the service that I feel, and I'm happy to be challenged on this, I feel they have not received since 2015.
Well,
okay.
we've not seen the local MP.
No,
we have tried to podcast him 3 times.
Several times.
3 times he hasn't attended.
Yes. Last minute cancellation.
Last minute, which is
well, that's unacceptable because you know when you're going to be busy.
John's come
John
along.
Penrose.
Yes, he's a nice guy.
Yes.
And he's been brilliant. He was brilliant.
He was very good, yeah. It's funny because what you just said about local, I've had that debate with my dad a number of times because my dad constantly says, why did you not go for the leader of the party position?
Me?
Because he felt that you would be a fantastic candidate.
I'd probably say the F word too often.
Well, my view was that because you are all about local and local people.
Absolutely.
And you wouldn't be able to do that if you were in London.
No, not so much. Not so much. There are lots of people in the Lib Dems who make great leaders of the future. I work with them. I have young people working with me now who I think if you choose to go down the Lib Dem route, you are going somewhere, mate. And I just think it's my privilege to have worked with a very large number of young people. I've got a young man working with me at the moment. He's with me for the whole of the summer because his university's finished now. He'll be fantastic. It doesn't need for me to be the leader of the party. I'm far better being a troublemaker.
I find that an interesting conversation because I have approached, I'm touching on mental health here. And I touched on, you get all these people that actually are not on the ground, that don't really know what's going on. Why don't you come to somebody like me and ask for our opinions? We're the grassroots people. And somebody said to me, send your CV in a letter. And I just thought, do you know what? And for years and years and years, as you know, I'm quite experienced in mental health and addiction and various other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And I think when the policy that the government, what did you call it, that they brought out this year about mental health and suicide reduction and stuff like that. And you think, it's all very well saying that, but are you actually
doing it on the ground? I know. I mean, I think if I was going to make a criticism of the current Parliament, and I could make it, I suppose, I think they have lost touch. They've run out of steam, they've run out of ideas, and it's not very difficult to try to alleviate some of the problems that our infrastructure, if you like, the structure of the country seems to have sort of fallen over rather. And yet I know that when I was in a hospital, not in this area, up in Essex, visiting somebody very recently, and I spoke to the staff. Just chat to the staff. They don't know who I am from Adam. Blimey, I reckon in 20 minutes I knew more about what was wrong with that hospital than their managers ever knew.
Absolutely.
Ever knew. And And I could see
it, but nothing
changes. No, because no one ever. It's all too big.
But also that comes back to accountability, doesn't it? So everything's about accountability, you know. And like if you're accountable for what you do in your job,
I am.
I'm accountable for what I do. I'm accountable. And I think when you're almost independent, which we all three of us are, we're pretty independent workers, you can be accountable.
Yes.
But I think sometimes individuals don't want to take the accountability. And part of that is led by the leaders.
Yes.
And I think part of that is also led by, I get paid.
Yeah, and that's so shocking.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, I saw something I should never have seen in that hospital. Yeah. I saw something that should never have happened in that hospital. And there are fundamentals, aren't there, where you know, people are too grand when they're sitting on a reception desk to wash their hands. Go, hang on, mate. No, wash your bloody hands.
Yeah.
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
You know, and I did ask, and I just thought, I better not get into full Tessa mode because you know I would be asking why you feel you shouldn't wash your hands.
Yeah.
And that can be quite challenging, and it's not my place to challenge in somebody else's yard, but as a human being, I think I have every right to challenge what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we
I know, you know, when I my children have told me that when they hear me on the phone when I'm fighting for somebody else,
I get that as well.
You know, just but I can't bear injustice. I can't bear things that are so obviously wrong. You know, if I can see it that easily, why can't others? And why hasn't somebody challenged what's happening?
But I think that there's a real debate there, and I'd love to kind of carry this on at a later date on the podcast. And I think it would be a really good thing to do is to look at that, because there are so many. And I say to Dave and I have had this conversation recently. If just for a situation, my knowledge, the fact that we can afford. Yeah. We're lucky, we've worked hard and we've got some money behind us that we can afford that. Yeah. The circumstances which I found myself in, other families couldn't do that. They just couldn't do it. I mean, you and I have had a brief conversation about something about it, but it's like, it's wrong.
Yes.
It is wrong. But it's wrong because that equality bit doesn't come into it. I mean, I've got a voice. I have no qualms about telling people, but some people need people like me to speak for them.
That's right.
On their behalf.
You know,
you.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's helped me a lot is having had many years of my life when I lived, you know, I had an energy prepayment meter.
Yeah.
You know,
I
have had to manage on almost nothing.
Yeah.
For many, many years. So I know I do know exactly what it feels. I know what not wanting to open envelopes feels like, you know. And I took a pile of envelopes from somebody the other day, and that's 3.5, 4 inches high, and they were all unopened. And I said, no, I'll take those. Yeah. And I opened them and read them, and they're awful. You know, they're just terrible. But then one's in a position to intervene on somebody's behalf and say, look, this person's so unwell.
Yeah, they can't do it.
Open your envelopes. So please, let's start afresh, shall we?
But it's crazy.
But I know how it feels.
Yeah, but it's crazy that in instances like that, the companies that you're talking about that send those letters about, you know, utilities, bills, and so on, you can have a conversation with them.
Oh yeah.
And you know, you agree something.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, it's almost like that's been completely forgotten. That's so wrong.
Yeah, I know, and it is wrong, and it's why people like me send lots of emails saying, thank you for the conversation we've just had when you agreed that you were going to do this and this and this, and you were going to do it until this time, and then we're going to have a review. What date's the review? You know, and if I don't record stuff by throwing, I mean, the really good thing about email, I mean, email's terrifying because I get literally a couple of hundred a day. It's absolutely terrifying, and I'm really worried I'm going to miss something important. That's what's worrying about it, because it's only me that answers my stuff. But
The washing machine's making a noise. I apologise. Yeah.
Somebody reversing into your house.
No, it would have been finished by now.
That's all right. That's okay. But it is that the ability to record what has happened in a very swift bullet.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love email.
Yeah, and that in that way, it's the best thing.
It's traceable.
Yeah.
Actually, look at your emails.
Yes, exactly.
We've done an hour and more.
God, have we?
Yeah, and I know you've got appointments, and we've got somebody queuing at the door, I think.
Oh, goodness.
I'd really like to invite you back whenever you... Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. Yeah, because it's been really good chat. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I hope they don't all turn off after 3 minutes.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Tessa. It's been great.
Thank you.